So we're getting close to the end of our unit, and we're going to try to answer some of our questions today. So looking at some of our big ideas, we went back to our timeline we had made in each class. So we found out what happened to the boy with dropping the weight on his foot. And so I'm just kind of looking at one because you might not be in that class we're talking about. So we had things talking about swelling. He couldn't feel the top of his foot. Getting more range of motion, little tenderness in his foot. There's increased blood flow. And we wanted to see if we can answer. So if there was numbness and then he got that back, so we know something's going on with the nerve cells. So we know that there must have been maybe nerve damage at the beginning, so he could not feel it. And then as it healed, he could feel it again. So we can kind of explain that away. The stitches were able to come out, so we can explain that because as the skin cells were reproducing, they fill in the gap. And so the skin contacts itself again, and we close that up. So we can explain why stitches could come out. There's increased blood flow, which is good because if we have an injury, we want to make sure there's good circulation for red blood cells to bring oxygen in. We can also get white blood cells to fight any infection off. If there was any bleeding, we can get platelets there. So we understand why that would be important. So it seems like the only one we cannot explain right now is the swelling. We haven't read anything about swelling yet, so we're going to see if we can figure that one out today. So let's take a look at some swelling. And just think about a time when something you did to your body caused you to swell up. It could be from falling off a bike and doing something, or running into a wall, or I don't know, whatever it might be. So we're going to take a look at a picture of a couple things where we have swelling. So these pictures here, it looks like somebody did something pretty bad to their knee. You can definitely tell it's swollen. I mean, here's the person's left knee, and that's definitely larger than this one. So they've done something pretty serious here to, I think, their right knee. It looks like somebody might have twisted their ankle here, so this seems like it's swollen right around the ankle. You can see this whole side looks like it's actually bruised along the whole side here and swollen. So somebody really messed up their foot over here too. What usually goes around with swelling is it gets larger than normal, as you can see with the knee up here. Sometimes bruising, which I think we're seeing down here. Sometimes redness. It might feel like it's kind of spongy, or you can kind of press on it. It doesn't feel like a regular body part. It feels like it's got something extra in it. Sometimes they're tender. It might hurt a little bit. It might turn a little red, depending on what you did and what kind of damage it is. So just kind of thinking of some swelling there. So now we're going to take a look at a doctor's report to kind of see maybe if a doctor's report might give us some information about swelling. So here is a doctor's report. It's just a person, they jammed their right index finger, they were playing volleyball. It says it's painful to try to bend the finger. If you've ever jammed your finger, you know what that feels like. It says the finger is swollen, showing redness or bruising, which we kind of just talked about with swelling. Person's concerned about recovery, they want to play volleyball again. It says, reassured the patient that swelling is the body's automatic reaction to an injury in a tissue. So, okay, that's something we could use. So it happens automatically. So you don't have to think about it. And there is increased blood flow to the area and extra fluid buildup. And it says swelling will lessen as the tissues in the finger heal. And then they're just kind of going through some other stuff about how to make it better for the patient. But that's interesting. We have automatic reaction. It increases the blood flow to the area, and there's also extra fluid buildup. So let's see if we can find out why that would make a big difference. So if we come back to these pictures here, if we have increased blood flow, if there was any damage here, like any cells were dying or were damaged, increased blood flow would get more oxygen there. We also have, if there was a cut, we could get more white blood cells. If there was bleeding, we could get more platelets there. So I could see the increased blood flow. Also, what's in the blood is the plasma. And plasma, one of its jobs is to carry the blood cells, the red white blood cells, the red blood cells, the white blood cells, and the platelets. It's also supposed to remove any waste. So if there's any damaged areas in these swollen feet or the swollen knee, that plasma could carry out some of the damaged cells. There may be dying cells. And if we have more fluid there, it would kind of quicken up the healing because it would allow more things to be moved in and out of there quicker. We kind of made an analogy if you're around a car accident. Sometimes they close off a couple lanes on either side of the accident and they put cones up. It just gives more people, or it gives the people more room to kind of clean up any broken glass or oil or anything that might have spilled or car parts. So it kind of swells the road, like you're kind of going from one lane to maybe 3 lanes in an area, and it kind of closes off so you can get there, so you can get in there quicker, clean it up, and then go back to regular traffic. So it's almost like what the body's doing. It's kind of taking a 1-lane road, swelling it, so we can get more blood vessels in there, or blood cells, white blood cells, red blood cells, platelets, and also the plasma. Since there's more plasma in there, you can kind of flush out the bad stuff a lot quicker. So we kind of talked about that. And then finally, on page 43 and 44 of your folder, you want to turn to that. And what we're going to do is kind of fill it in here. I've got one already filled in, so you can kind of just use this to copy the information in. So I'm going to show you that page now. So on page 43 and 44, it's going to look like this. You've got 5 headings. So you've got stitches removed and dissolved, swelling lessened and gone, pain gone, cast and pins removed, and regular shoe, no crutches needed. And we're trying to find out what we know, what we've learned in the last couple weeks that would explain why these things can happen. So why the stitches were no longer needed, why the swelling went away, why the pain was gone, etc. And then we're also trying to look for evidence about where we found this out. So I've already got one filled in for you, so we're just going to pop over to that. So here's our first one. So this is for how the body healed. So this is like the top box for yours. So when the stitch was removed and dissolved, it's because the skin cells made more skin cells to fill the gap, and they could close the skin. And also the muscle cells made more muscle cells to fill it, and they could reconnect. So that's why the stitches were able to be removed, because the body had healed by doing those things. The next one is the swelling lessened and was gone. It's because the tissues healed as the new cells fill the gaps. We just read that swelling goes away as it heals, so it must not have had to have that increased blood flow or liquid in there anymore. So it says the extra fluid carried away the waste, which means it was the cells that were no longer functioning. The extra blood isn't needed anymore because everything is back to normal. So the swelling goes down when everything's back to normal. The pain was gone because the nerves weren't sending the message along anymore. When they were healed, then they could connect again with the brain, and you could feel the top of the foot. So that makes sense. We learned about nerve cells. The cast and the pins were removed because the bone cells filled in the gaps, and the bones weren't broken anymore, so we didn't need the cast, we didn't need the pins anymore. And then finally, we could go back to wearing a normal shoe. We had no need for crutches because the bone, the muscle, and the skin was all working back again as a group, working together and functioning normally, so it didn't need to have any crutches anymore. On the bottom part, where we got evidence, for the first one, we saw a video of the skin cells growing. We also read some articles about the blood bringing things in for different purposes, oxygen and white blood cells. For the swelling, we read about the injured finger. We know that plasma carries things away, so we swelled up our finger so we could get the plasma in there to get out the damaged stuff. When we were reading about the nerves in the foot, we read an article about the foot, about how the signals were sent to the brain. So in this section here, we're just trying to figure out where did we find these out in our unit. Cast and pins removed. We know that, when we have an area like that with a gap, we watched a video where we saw skin cells growing back together again. We also know that, with more food and oxygen going, that they could grow more and faster and seal up the crack there. And then we know when everything works with the chicken wing, when everything works, we don't have to have any special things like taking a shoe off or having to use crutches. So we know that when everything works well, it functions well. When something's broken, it doesn't work well, and we need something to fill in the gap on how to get our body to work the right way. So that's what we did today. So just kind of look at these 2 pages here. This one is the bottom part of page 43 and 44. And this part here is the top parts of page 43 and 44. And that was it for today.